One jet, one pilot, dropped into 1940 with technology 80 years ahead of its time. He has radar that can see through clouds, missiles that home from beyond visual range, and a stealth skin that makes him a ghost to German eyes. So why is it not obvious that he could stop the Blitzkrieg cold? And what hidden limitations of both the F-35 and 1940s battlefield might flip your intuition on its head? On one side, the F-35 Lightning II, a single-seat fifth-generation multi-role fighter designed to fuse data from radar, infrared sensors, and electronic warfare systems into one coherent picture for the pilot. It can fly faster than the speed of sound, reach altitudes above 50,000 feet, pull 9G turns, and carry smart bombs and air-to-air missiles inside its body to stay invisible to radar. In a modern battle phase, it does not just shoot, it sees, thinks, and shares, acting as a flying command post as much as a fighter. But you cannot understand this scenario without seeing the other side as they really were. In May 1940, the Blitzkrieg into France combined fast Panzer spearheads with close air support from the Luftwaffe. Ju-87 Stuka dive bombers screaming down on bridges and columns, Bf-109 fighters escorting them, and shooting up anything that moved, all coordinated by radio to break French lines before they could react. In 6 weeks, Germany knocked out France, Belgium, the Netherlands, and forced Britain off the continent. Over 400,000 Allied troops were trapped near Dunkirk alone before evacuation. This shock campaign was built on tempo, fear, and cutting communications as much as raw power fire. Picture northern France in May 1940. Patchwork fields, hedgerows, rivers, and small towns stitched together by narrow roads and a handful of vital bridges, all under gray spring skies that can flip from clear to low cloud in an hour. German panzer columns are pushing west and south, their movement timed with Luftwaffe strikes that hit rail junctions, supply convoys, and retreating units, creating bottlenecks the tanks then exploit before defenders can reorganize. The Luftwaffe's early war dominance rests on relatively short distances, forward airfields and aircraft like the Bf-109 and Ju-87 that can sortie many times a day from bases close to the front. Now drop one F-35A or C into this environment. Its combat radius on internal fuel is roughly 500 to 700 nautical miles depending on profile. It can loiter for hours if launched from a nearby base or carrier, and it can carry precision-guided bombs and air-to-air missiles internally while remaining stealthy. But here comes the twist. In 1940, there are no JP-8 pipelines, no hardened shelters, no data links, or compatible maintenance equipment. Every sortie drains a logistics chain that does not exist yet. Change one variable, say give the F-35 unlimited fuel and perfect maintenance in theater, and it becomes a near constant angel of death over German spearheads. Change a different one, imagine it has to ferry back to Britain after each mission, and suddenly its impact collapses into a few strikes a day. So the real question is not just what can the jet do, but under which exact conditions is it even in the air when it matters most? Freeze the calendar on 13 May 1940, as German armor is forcing crossings over the Meuse, and the Luftwaffe is tearing into French positions and bridges with dive bombers. In our first scenario, the F-35 is tasked purely as an air superiority and interdiction predator. Its job is to hunt German aircraft and smash key bridges and choke points ahead of the Panzers. It takes off from a hypothetical forward strip in Britain or Western France, climbs above 30,000 feet, and switches its radar and infrared sensors to wide area search. Where a Bf-109 pilot sees a sky of scattered contacts, the F-35 pilot sees a God's eye view of every formation in a radius of hundreds of kilometers, tagged and sorted on his helmet display. He spots a Stuka group with Bf-109 escorts forming up for a strike on a crucial bridge, stays invisible on their primitive radar, and from beyond visual range fires radar-guided missiles that pick off the escorts before they ever know they're under attack. Then he dives in closer, using his cannon and remaining missiles to shred the unprotected bombers. Over the next 3 hours, he repeats this pattern, intercepting bomber waves, ambushing fighter patrols, and hitting at least one key bridge with precision bombs, forcing German columns to bunch up at river lines instead of flooding across. Losses that historically took the Luftwaffe weeks to accumulate now happen in a single day, and panic ripples through German air crews who suddenly start dying without ever seeing their attacker. The provisional verdict here is brutal. In a pure air predator role, one F-35 could decimate the Luftwaffe's freedom of action over critical sectors. But this is only one way to use it, and it assumes the jet never runs out of fuel, spares, or luck. Now, flip the mission completely. Instead of hunting planes, the F-35 becomes an invisible electronic scalpel, aimed at the nervous system of Blitzkrieg. The German attack in 1940 leans heavily on reliable radio links between forward tanks, artillery, and Luftwaffe controllers. Those shortwave radios and primitive ground control networks are what let panzers call in Stuka strikes on stubborn strongpoints and coordinate flanking moves faster than the French can react. The F-35 carries an advanced electronic warfare suite, like the AN/ASQ-239, designed to detect, geolocate, and jam enemy emitters across a broad frequency range, and to do so while remaining hard to detect itself. It can sniff out radio chatter, radar pulses, and even small command posts, then either blind them with jamming or mark them for precision attack. In this scenario, the jet prowls high above the front, silently mapping every German radio net and artillery radar, then selectively cutting links at the worst possible moments. A panzer regiment loses contact just as it needs a bridge strike. A Stuka group dives on coordinates that are minutes out of date. A Corps HQ finds its orders delayed or garbled. To German officers, it looks like incompetence or equipment failure. To the F-35 pilot, it is deliberate disruption, turning a carefully timed blitzkrieg into a series of disjointed pushes. But there is a catch. Every minute spent jamming is a minute of fuel burned, and in 1940, each landing risks maintenance that no one in that era is trained to perform. Now, throw in a wild card. A week of bad weather over France. Low clouds, heavy rain, and fog that grounds most of the Luftwaffe's operations and limits visual navigation for both sides. Historically, such conditions could slow air support, but not stop the tanks, which kept grinding forward as soon as they could see a few hundred meters ahead. The F-35, however, is built to fight in exactly this kind of environment. Its radar and distributed aperture sensors can see through cloud and darkness. Its infrared systems can pick out tank columns by their heat, and its sensor fusion turns this into a clear, stable picture for the pilot, even when the ground below is a gray blur. In Scenario 3, the jet flies missions in weather that leaves German pilots nearly blind, stalking Panzer spearheads as they inch along mud-choked roads and hitting them with precision bombs at choke points like bridges, forests, and towns. A single strike collapses a key bridge, forcing columns to divert onto one or two narrow routes. Another hits a fuel convoy, leaving dozens of tanks stranded. A third wipes out a divisional HQ trying to relocate under cover of fog. Suddenly, Blitzkrieg's tempo, the heartbeat of the campaign, stutters and skips. Instead of a continuous wave, German advances become bursts separated by long pauses as units wait for fuel, orders, or replacement bridges. Yet, even here, the limits of one aircraft loom large. It can only be in one sector at a time, and while it devastates whichever column it chooses, the others keep moving. Blitzkrieg feeds on three things: speed, concentration, and surprise. German armor does not just drive fast, it hits narrow fronts with overwhelming force while the Luftwaffe smashes communications and reserves behind the line, causing a psychological collapse long before every unit is physically destroyed. The F-35 feeds on something else: information. Its sensors and fusion systems knit radar, infrared, and electronic signals into one picture, letting the pilot see bomber formations, tank columns, and command posts across a huge area and decide where a single blow will hurt the most. When that invisible hunter tears apart bomber groups over the mouse, scrambles the radios that keep Panzers and Stukas in sync, or uses bad weather as a cloak to hit fuel convoys and bridges, the tempo that made Blitzkrieg terrifying begins to falter. Attacks arrive late, support is missing, columns stall where they were meant to surge. Yet every success hides a fragile condition. Fuel and maintenance cobble together in a 1940 world that does not understand this machine. Imperfect intelligence about which road or bridge truly matters, and a pilot forced to choose one crisis out of 10 each day. Change just one decision. Ignore the boring job of jamming radios to chase dramatic bridge explosions, or misread which column carries the vital fuel, and that single futuristic fighter suddenly looks less like a war winner and more like a scalpel carving deep wounds into a beast that still, somehow, keeps moving. So, could a single F-35 have ended the Blitzkrieg in 1940? The honest answer is that it could almost certainly have wrecked specific operations, breaking key crossings at the Moose, massacring bomber formations, paralyzing radio nets, and in doing so might have stretched the German advance from weeks into months, giving France and Britain time to regroup or dig in deeper. But Blitzkrieg was not one narrow corridor or one bridge. It was a campaign across hundreds of kilometers, with multiple spearheads, bridging units ready to replace destroyed crossings, and a doctrine built on improvisation and initiative at lower levels. Our single F-35 is a god of any one battle it enters, yet it is still one mortal machine with finite fuel, maintenance, and pilot endurance. It wins any duel, but it cannot be everywhere at once, and Blitzkrieg's strength is that it hits everywhere that matters simultaneously. The unsettling twist is this. The jet's most decisive role might not be blowing up panzers at all, but feeding 1940 commanders a modern, near-perfect picture of the battlefield, turning their clumsy responses into something closer to a modern network defense. So here's the question I'll leave hanging. If you could send one miracle weapon back in time, but not the doctrine and infrastructure to use it properly, would you be changing history or just adding one more legend to it?